get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Jon Tsourakis of Oyova. And Jon, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And I don't know why this popped into my head today, but some great books and authors I've had on. I've had Chris Voss on from Never Split the Difference. He wrote John Ruhlin, one of my favorites, Giftology. Brian Kurtz wrote Over Deliver. Perry Marshall, who I was chatting with via email the other day, 80/20 Sales and Marketing. Gino Wickman wrote Traction, and that reminded me because we were talking before we hit record on, you're a big picture, big vision type of person. So Mark Winters and Gino Wickman wrote Rocket Fuel for like the integrator visionary, and it just sounds like you're the visionary type. And one of my favorites is Bob Burg, the Go-Giver, just giving to people. So I don't know, Jon, if you have any favorites throughout the years, any business books or books on your list?
Yeah, I've read a lot. It's funny what you mentioned. I have a funny Chris Voss story.
Oh, really? Okay. Tell me.
He contacted us years ago to do some work. This is before my business partner and I merged companies, and we read the book, and we were talking at the time, and his whole thing is don't split the difference, right? So he was negotiating us down, and we wouldn't split the difference, and then we didn't get the deal. So it's like, like you're practicing this thing, but you're also preaching it, and it seems like it's going to be a hindrance for business relationships. So
yeah, I like his what I got out of it was like tactical empathy and like at least seeing the other side of things. But I guess if you're hostage negotiator, you can't get half a person back. So I can see that. But that's a good one. I'll introduce you, Jon, in a second. This episode also is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We are a full service agency just for podcasting. That's it. We do accountability, strategy, the full execution. We call ourselves the magic elves that work in the background to make sure everything happens for the host, to make it easy and everything's seamless. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, you can go to rise25.com. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So you can check out rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce Jon Tsourakis. He's co-owner of Oyova, which is a 2-time Inc. 5000 award-winning agency. And Oyova does a number of things. They do custom software, marketing, development, IT consulting. And Jon also runs a digital mastermind group of agency owners that want to level up their game. And that can be found at digitalmastermind.com. And Jon, thanks for joining me.
Oh, man. Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
Talk about Oyova a little bit and what you do.
Yeah, we're the culmination of 2 companies that merged together. One was a digital marketing agency. The other one was a development side. And we help companies get more attention, whether that's drive leads, awareness to something on the digital marketing front. Create a really strong hub insofar as building a strong web presence, insofar as whether it's going to be an e-commerce or a brochure or even something way more complicated. And we also help affect the bottom line by creating systems integrations and things that create efficiencies in business critical applications.
Talk about merging. What was that like?
So my business partner and I have known each other for quite some time. We actually met in the mastermind group that I now run, the Digital Mastermind. We'd always talked about it. It was just something that we'd always kind of, have some drinks and mention like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And then in 2018, the economy was doing so well. We're like, all right, if we're going to do it, now is the time that we're going to do it. So yeah, we essentially put the plan in place. We put it on paper. It seemed like it looked really good, and then we decided to pull the trigger and move forward. And we did. It was great. Like we had year-over-year growth. and we were able to cross-sell a lot of the clients, which was something that we wanted to do. And we had worked with each other before on a few projects, so it wasn't completely blind. And it's been fantastic.
What are some things if someone out there is thinking of merging? They've been in the same conversations. Maybe they have someone that's kind of a close-knit partner. They've done work together and collaborated. Were there be things that you tell people like, listen, I think you should just stay on your own versus merging?
Yeah, I think it fits a personality profile. Like you have to be. I've met some fantastic entrepreneurs that I think hit a ceiling because of their inability to have partners. And you'll see these businesses where they're like, I don't want a partner, but it depends on how you look at a partnership. For instance, if you take on a loan with a bank, well, it's technically they're giving you their money. That's a partnership. If you take on any other investors, those are partners. So I think it's just really wrapping your head around what partnership means and what your function and their function is going to be in that relationship, and try to get it as crystal clear as possible. It's never going to be completely clear. There's going to be conflicts that arise, and also look at how you deal with those conflicts. If you're just going to run and hide and not be straight up about something, it's probably not going to be the best thing. And I think you should probably stay where you're at. But if you're willing to do the work in the relationship and for the business, understanding what your lane is, I think it can be a really fantastic endeavor.
What's interesting, Jon, about your background is you actually had a partnership that didn't work out. So yeah. I would think you'd be a little bit gun shy with this one.
Yeah, but I think there's people are variables, right? There's lots of people. We're a variable ourselves, and we're going on this journey, and things are changing. And I rushed into that partnership. I didn't realize that. I think by all accounts now, the person was probably like mentally unstable. Like the guy would write emails in all caps and all red and send those to clients. Like that's a good idea. So not knowing those things, I think you really got to know that your person that you're going to work with, and also digging into their personal life. Like you need to go out to dinner with your business partner and then their spouse or their partner, and just really get an understanding. If you can talk to other people that are in their life and see like, okay, they've had their friends for a long time. Like if this is somebody that's, born again in some new way, and they're, you got to really go with your gut. Like if it smells bad, it's going to be bad.
Yeah, no, totally. It's like a marriage, essentially.
Yeah, it really is.
Talk about, you don't have to talk about details, but like if someone's thinking, listen, that sounds like a great idea. I have someone I'm talking to. How did you work out the financial arrangement? Because I'm sure there's stuff that's equal. Maybe no one has exactly equal revenue or exactly equal clients. How did you think through the financial arrangement of a merger?
Dollar for dollar. So we literally went dollar for dollar and said like, okay, this is going to make the most sense. Because once you get into like, there's so many models of valuing companies. And it's almost like it's sales process, right? What it really comes down. Everybody can have a different sales process, and you can build logic. Like if a company isn't profitable, you could say, oh, well, the brand value, and then there's brand equity here, and this is worth this. So there's a lot of these games, and I think we were able to have a real adult conversation and say like, okay, this is where we're at, and it's pretty even split across the board.
With you talk to a lot of agency owners as well. What have you seen with valuation? Have you seen it based off a certain multiple of EBITDA? Have you seen profit? Or have you seen revenue? What have you seen as far as valuation of agencies?
All the above. I think the most, and this is the thing, a lot of agencies have a hard time realizing that their valuation is going to be garbage when they're under $1 million, right? Like you're not going to get anything. You can see like maybe like a 1 or 2 times multiple on your EBITDA. If you're lucky, 3. But the more revenue you have, the bigger your multiples are going to be, right? And then there's a lot of agencies that are doing roll-ups right now because they know once they get past that $8 million mark that they're now a much more sellable company, and there's a lot more revenue there. I think whether it's going to be EBITDA or client, it's just finding the right buyer. right? Because somebody just might want your client list, but if you can align your expectations with your goals and their goals, then things tend to work out. But man, I've seen all kinds of stuff where there's absolutely no profit, but they're selling they're just going to go ahead and sell off their client list, and they're going to do an asset sale rather than a liability sale. But I think the main thing is just educating themselves and really talking to a lot of people before they just jump into something.
I know for you, you're kind of a big vision person, and you think a lot about growth. I love to hear, and I've, through my research, you talk a lot about you like having a process and a sales process. Talk about how agencies should think about the sales process.
Yeah. And first off, I think it's worth stating that if you don't think you have a process, you still have a process. It's probably just a subpar process. But I think really defining what your process is, and mine's continually evolving, optimizing, and shaping. But I think it's really important to understand why somebody's going to work with you, right? So if you're niche focused, if you're just starting out, right, and the best thing to do is niche focus. The reason being because that helps build trust based on you having experience or a breadth of case studies in a specific area. And then at the end of the day, the sales process needs to be really built about trust. Ours is very transparent. There's a lot of agencies that do value-based pricing, which is also known as discriminatory pricing, right? So for instance, I saw a lot of that early in my career being in some healthcare marketing, where depending on which watch the guy was wearing, whether when they were selling eyeglasses or hearing aids or any of these other things, that's what they would charge. Oh yeah, man, that was a Rolex. All right, we could sell these things for like $8,000, right? Especially in the hearing aid space. So ours
value-based pricing sounds a lot better than discriminatory pricing.
It does, doesn't it? But that's what it is. You will discriminate based on the car they drive and some of these other things. Bed sales have been like that. A lot of the shady car sales, a lot of the shady businesses that people hate have value-based pricing or discriminating pricing. So ours is we're hour-based. And a lot of people say like, oh, well, you can't scale that way. You can. A lot of agencies have. The problem with value-based pricing is the scalability of it. Things you can really lose your ass in some areas. You got to be careful, especially as you grow. That being said, we're clear. We create a clear picture, meaning we show a spreadsheet like, hey, literally, this is where all the time is going. This is what you're paying. This is what our hourly rate is. They get an idea of essentially, our margin, our cost, and where everything's at related to their project. So that's our process. And we discovered that by really looking at ourselves and the people that we like to talk to. So I think we have a fantastic process, but I think the main thing is figure out what's really going to work and connect. There is no point in the conversation that somebody can't say to us like, hey, how about this? Where we're not on, we're not able to answer that immediately. And that's the worst thing in a sales process, where somebody doubts what it is that you're pricing. Because they could say, hey, I think your hourly rate's too high. We could say, all right, well, yeah, we have all of our workers are here in the States, and you're more than welcome to go overseas. But this is where we're at. So we're just really, really clear about that. And then I don't agree with just sending a proposal to somebody. I think that's another thing that agencies just do willy-nilly. So tell them what their price is, show them how you came to that number, get them to agree that they're going to move forward in some capacity, and then send the proposal later. They're essentially buying that proposal. We don't do proposals for free. That's a horrible business.
Talk about the evolution of pricing, because you mentioned, this is what you have now. You have a, well-oiled machine with a process. I imagine when you started off, it's a work in progress. What did it start off as, and talk about the evolution to what you just talked about?
Oh man. So like going all the way back, like when I first started my agency, like the recession.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
Right. I think we were at like $50 an hour and nobody was buying anything. So we just had to just do whatever we could, everything from logos to fixing people's emails, systems and whatnot. So yeah, we were like $50 an hour. And then I tried value-based pricing. And that's what I realized it didn't work, because just trying to control the scope, trying to control all these other things, you have to work harder to do that. And I think it puts you at conflict with your partner, the company you're working with. And then went back to hourly. And hourly is much easier for the business to calculate. everybody says, well, we don't track time. It's like, well, that's great. That's grand. Whatever. I don't know what world that is, but you know what? Your employees are tracking their time because they're only going to be doing something for a certain amount of time, and God bless them. I don't blame them. So went back to tracking time, then moved it up to $75 an hour, and then realized that like we can't pay people more unless we raise our rates. And that's essentially what has dictated us raising our rates every single time. Now we've just recently instituted annual, I think it's like 4% increase. We increase all of our prices 4% every year. And we work with other agencies too. So when they have to sell our services, we chop into our margin to do that. We offer a lower hourly rate. And I mean, I can go into details. I mean, outside of retainer, we're at 160 an hour. Like when it's an agency wants to work with us, we go down to like 135. If it's a really big deal and we can work something out, we'll even go lower. So yeah, I'm happy to be transparent.
What about, from the agency standpoint, what are the most popular services that other agencies want you to help them with?
Yeah, it's either going to come down to like SEO. So we do SEO for other agencies, as well as a lot of web dev. So there's a ton of agencies out there that do very surface level websites, right? That and it works for them. So there's a marketing agency, and they're like, well, we do brochure based websites, and they can do those, and they can do decent. But when they get into something that requires a lot of know-how and expertise, that's when they'll typically contact us, when it's some really deep bench type stuff. WordPress, we get into that. Shopify, whether it's going to be like building plugins, things like that. And then also on the application side, they have a client that needs a business critical application, and they'll pull us in to help out with. And then sometimes it's framework stuff also, as well as like HubSpot and things like that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And if you're watching the video, also I'm on the Oyova.com website, and we're going to walk through because I want to hear a little bit more, get a great understanding of what you do. So we'll talk through some of the companies you've helped. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about, you mentioned don't just send a proposal. You mentioned, value-based pricing is discriminatory pricing, and be aware and careful of that. What are some other mistakes you see agencies making?
Giving strategy away for free, not really placing value on that. I think the other is not controlling scope. Right. So a lot of agencies will just lose their ass on websites because they don't understand how to control the scope. And the way that you control the scope is every project that you do, you lock it in a number of estimated hours. That way you have a mechanism to have a conversation with somebody like, all right, hey, like we estimated that this was going to be 700 hours. And these features that you had were unknowns at the time. We thought that we could take them on. We can't. So that gives you room. And it's not for you to just nickel and dime them and slam your client. You need context for conversation. When you do something that is just amorphous, you're going to get into a lot of trouble. And I think that's what scares a lot of agencies out of doing complicated websites, or even websites in general. Because, I mean, you get into somebody's thought process, which is, I'm gonna know when I see it. It's like, dude, those are the most dangerous words. That and like, I want it to pop. We're like, all right, well, we got to really define what pop means, and we also really need to understand like what moves the needle for you from a creative inspiration standpoint.
I can only imagine, John. We've heard, I'll know when I see it is a scary thing to hear, and we'll maybe do the cover art for something. That's it. Like, we don't want to mess around with anything else because it's so subjective. And I can't imagine doing that like you for a whole website, right? Like, we're just talking about one image and you're doing it across the whole website. So how do you, and sometimes people have the best of intentions and they just don't know. How do you get from, we'll know it when we see it, and you the person's not trying to be difficult, they just don't know. How do you have a process where you're like, okay, here's where we're going to get to, so we're not just throwing something in the dark, darts and, blindfolded?
Yeah, we start that in the sales process. So if you want a new website or you want a website redesign, we ask them to come to the table with 2 to 3 sites of inspiration. So that way we're talking to these about these sites, and then now we have context of comparison, right? Context is always super important, right? So we can refer back to those. Well, this is what you wanted on those sites. And then when you socialize those things, it's leverage to a certain extent. And it's not that I'm trying to get leverage over anybody, but what happens is a relationship when it comes to something creative can get super acrimonious in a short amount of time. And it's when somebody doesn't feel like they're being heard or they're not being seen. So you want to get all that out in the sales process as much as possible, and then put those sites in the proposal somewhere. Like, hey, we're referencing. And if you want to get really detailed, you can even talk about the individual features, because some of the other places that you're going to lose on a website is interactivity. You said, oh, I thought that was going to move, or I thought that was going to be animated. And that's when it can become a big problem. The beautiful thing is, and we do websites for people that haven't had one before, or of course, they work for a business and now they're doing something else and now they're responsible for it. But it's really great when we work for some clients that have done lots of websites and they get to see our process and they're like, damn, this feels good, right? Because it's just making sure that everything is covered and that there's no room where they're going to not get an answer to their question, nor get a feature that they wanted, and make sure that it is just really high quality. Because that's important. And the sad thing is, not to ramble on this, a lot of agencies, when they do this stuff, they have all of those best intentions. They want to do really good work, and they did not budget for that really good work. Sometimes I've seen it where they'll lose by tenfold, right? They quoted a website for $5,000. It's a $50,000 website. They had no idea what they're getting into, but because they're a good person, they still finish it. And the relationship strained at that point because, of course, they were emotional about it. And now they don't ever want to touch anything like that again. And then they unfortunately put themselves into a box because now they're going to do subpar work because they don't ever want to go back to that pain again.
I like what you said about sites of inspiration, because it allows people to show a concrete example. So at least you know what they're talking about. So let's talk. I want to talk about a couple examples so the audience can understand more about the process and what you do. There was an AC company that you've helped with for many years. Talk about, first of all, how they come to you first and what you do with them.
So got a lead off Craigslist, right? It was 2 guys.
Craigslist. Okay.
Craigslist, man. You remember that? Yeah.
Totally.
It was the Silk Road before the Silk Road, I think, for some people. There was they were looking for a website, and they'd heard that there's this thing called the internet, and they wanted some help. So went down to their like little storage unit, which essentially was where their office was, and sat down. There were 2 fantastic guys. And we just framed out like what an outline of like what marketing would look like. And I remember this is when I was doing value-based pricing. So I think I sold them an SEO package for like $500 a month. And back in the day too, that's where you could make a couple moves and you could get somebody ranked really quick. So you just looked like a wizard, right? And so we started out just really low budget. The cool thing is when they stopped working with us, because they were purchased by another company 10 years later for a multi-million-dollar multiplier. They just rapidly grew over 10 years. I think our monthly fees with them were like $17,000 a month. So we started at $500 for our monthly fees, 10 years earlier, and it was insane. And then their budget, I mean, some months we'd spend $250,000 on just digital ads, not including like TV and things like that. And I look back at that relationship. There were some bad conflicts that happened. There was one where they something happened with their forms on their website because we gave them edit access to this new employee that unfortunately thought they knew what they were doing and convinced us that they did. And none of the leads went through the website. Well, then one of their GMs now, because the leads didn't go through the website, and we caught it in a matter of like a week or 2, missed their number. So they didn't get their like Christmas bonus or something. And the guilt that they brought to the table is like, this is terrible. Like, but we went ahead and split the baby. We're like, all right, maybe we could have caught it for, it was investing in the lifetime value of that relationship. So I think there's a lot of things that
That's a tough one to chew, because
it wasn't our fault.
Ultimately it was their staff's fault.
Totally.
Yeah. But the blame always falls back on you in the end, no matter what.
It does. Yeah. And then I got them, and they were reasonable. I got them to agree, like, this isn't our fault. And like, all right, we know. And then it was just one of those things, like, all right, this is what we're willing to do. So I was leveraged a little bit, but it was like, all right, I got it. I understand where you guys are coming from. You guys understand where I'm coming from. And then let's go ahead and get this fixed. And then on that, the concession was like, you guys no longer get edit access. And they no longer got edit access to the website. So that would never happen again. So that's essentially what we were buying, the insurance as well.
So talk about the services a little bit, from the 500 to the 17,000 a month. So you start off doing SEO. What other services built over time?
So it was SEO and a website. So we started off with those, and then we got into paid search, and then we got into social media. And when I say those things, like, you could set up social media profiles, when we actually start doing the social media for an AC company, which is not the sexiest business, right? So you have to do as many philanthropic things, and they were all about that, and just really digging into their personality. And then paid search, it can be kind of a competitive business. So you got to look for like click fraud and all that. So just really staying on your toes and making sure that they're hitting their numbers. And at the end of the day, we had an agreement. They said, like, I don't care what you do. This is our goal. Do it. And those are the best relationships from a marketing perspective that I like, because that's where you are treated as really an agent of their success. They're giving you agency, right? So, all right, here's, we're going to spend, around $1 million this year. Like, we know that we need to create at least $5 million with that money. Can you make that happen? And just really being the team that can do that. And I had fantastic team members that were really helping out in a lot of ways to make that happen. So the services, man, to be frank, if they called up and said, hey, we need you to cook us dinner tonight, we would have figured out a way to make leads out of that. Like, I mean, they did. We filmed them going to parades, or we would film them. We would local SEO. We would, they get employees' houses, to show up for certain coverage areas. Yeah. So it was essentially do whatever you got to do to hit this number.
Jon, talk about niche for a second. You mentioned early on niche focused, and you talked about the AC. What were some of the niches that you served early on that you then grew because you maybe randomly got someone calling you from Craigslist early on?
Yeah, some of the niches early on, we did a lot of restaurants. We no longer really work with restaurants. I think we have like 1 or 2 clients left. And we did a lot of restaurant websites and a lot of restaurant marketing. And we realized it just wasn't a good fit for us based on personality of typically restaurant owners. Good people and whatnot. It's just, on a Saturday when they're freaking out about like a special, like, I can't ask my employees, and then it would just fall on myself. And then I think the other one was urgent care centers. When urgent care centers were blowing up, I don't think there is, I think that market's kind of matured. We did a lot in that urgent care space as well.
So restaurants, urgent care, not as much restaurants anymore, urgent care. What are some today that you focus more on?
Today I would say with legal, I'd say, yeah, we've had some legal clients over the years going all the way back to the beginning. So that's probably another niche that we've done pretty good in on the marketing side. Websites, I mean, we've done you name an industry, we've done a website in there. Drug dealers, no, just kidding about that. Well, actually some pharmaceutical, so I guess so. Yeah. And then as far as like on the business critical side, we've done education, we've done construction, and then construction, being based in Florida, we've done a lot of construction across all 3 of our departments.
You helped, there was an employment law firm. What kind of things did you do with them? Yeah.
Wenzel Fenton. Great guys. They've been clients of ours for 13 years. We helped them get off. I think they were on like Find Law or something at the time, and they're also another one of our clients that will do whatever it takes based on making sure that we hit their budget numbers. But they just started off with a couple of attorneys, And then now I don't know how many attorneys they have now, but they've grown substantially. And then they're now one of the largest in the Southeast for employment law.
Wow. So services wise, similar thing,
Similar
SEO,
thing.
paid, website stuff.
Yeah, making them lunch and dinner. You name it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Might
absolutely.
as well
Yeah,
hire you.
websites.
Yeah. I need hungry. You also helped a business management platform. This is kind
Yes.
of unique. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's a land surveying company called ME Land down in Florida. We built a business management platform for them about 8 years ago, and what they wanted is they wanted it to sync up to be completely integrated so they could be paperless. And this is before it was the cool thing to do, not necessarily so much the paperless, but the remoteness. So they were able to get rid of their office, work remote anywhere in the field where their surveys were automatically loaded, whether it's to the cloud and then linked up to the title companies that they work with, as well as sync up to the state for like certifications. And we were able to do that to the point where the owner would go like literally log in like an hour a week and then see, all right, everything's running perfectly, right? Because we built this platform as almost a business operating system where we systematized everything. And yeah, it's been a fantastic client ever since. And I think we're now on version 2 of the platform that we built for them.
I know your big vision, so I want to hear about what you're thinking about, opportunities you're looking at. So if anyone out there listening is a part of that opportunity, they can contact you. But also from a people perspective, hiring. You can only focus on big vision things because you have a team, right? So what was been the evolution of hiring and the positions you put in place in the company?
So as far as like hiring to begin with, I remember there's this guy that was working for me, and his mom called me and said he really needs a job. That was my first employee, this guy I grew up with, and so went ahead and gave him a job, and that was the first. And from there, I realized that we needed to just hire based on when we really needed something. Not that we didn't need that person. So I would always make it, I hate saying it this way, but it's the truth. It's always really painful before we would hire. Anytime I didn't have it where it was really strained on the team, not that I like straining a team, but it just comes down to resources. We always had to let that person go because there wasn't enough for them to do. So if I had to recommend anybody, it's just make sure that your team is over capacity before you hire, and make sure you got really good metrics and you can actually see what's happening. That's why I'm always very wary when somebody says like, oh, well, we don't track time and we don't look at this. And it's just this autonomous world. It's like, look, you're a business owner. If I was to track your time, I mean, you would probably bomb it because you would be like, wow, I wasted it all on this. So I think it's really important to track all those things and have a business case. This is why we're going to hire this developer. These are the projects that person that are in our pipeline that are in the future that this person would be applied to when we get this. So yeah, hope is never a strategy. You really got to look at what you have, where you're at, and have the metrics in place to move that number. Also, another piece of advice: have them tell you what they need to get paid, and then just really have that conversation. And don't talk somebody down off their number. That never goes well.
What positions did you have to hire for so that you could step into that visionary role? What were some of the critical pieces that you had to get off your plate so you could work on the business?
But just about everybody. So everything from copywriters to account managers. I think most agency owners are going to fall into one of the buckets. They're either going to be responsible, and don't get me wrong, I'm very involved in sales process. I love sales. Like, so I want that. But I would say account management is more than likely the biggest hire somebody needs to make so they can remove themselves from it, because that's going to be day-to-day client stuff. So I'll be involved in the sales process, have some conversations, and then we hand it over to the team. And then I just check in from time to time, right? And I like to have conversations with most of the companies that we're going to work with, because I think that creates stickiness. It's like, okay, this guy's one of the owners. And he's telling me these things. They're showing me these things. I trust this guy. I have his mobile number. If this doesn't go the way I want, then okay, then I can deal with this. I think when a lot of agency owners try to remove themselves completely from the sales process, things are going to go a little bit sideways if they're taking themselves away from the owner. Now, granted, if you guys are like super scalable and you're doing websites for $7 and some Tic Tacs, I get it. That model doesn't work, but that's not necessarily our model. We're very white glove, high touch. No matter what, we're going to do everything we can within our capacity to make them successful. I want to shake their hand because they're trusting us to do that. But going back to your question, any of your doers, you can start out with contractors. You don't have to have those as full-time employees. You really have to have it make sense for you to have those people as employees. Account managers, project managers, those need to be your first real hires so you can start removing yourself from it. And then you begin just continually ticking back. Whether you want to outsource your bookkeeping or so on and so forth is up to you. I do recommend knowing your numbers and being able to see them whenever you can, though. So I think that's going to be personality based.
What are you focused on, Jon, for as far as what are you on the lookout for big opportunities for the company?
Good fits, right? So marketing, it just comes down to aligning goals and budgets that I think our team would be able to execute on. We're really good in most industries. So it's just looking for those types of relationships. Websites, I mean, we do websites for over $1 million and we've done them for as little as $5,000 and everything in between. So I think it's just, a little bit more of alignment there. And then when it comes to like business critical and like what we'll call like technology consulting and things like that, like we don't get into like help desk for email and stuff like that, but we like to solve big tech problems. Those have to be somebody that is, what are you going to call it? They can't be scared. So a lot of people in IT, you heard the old adage, like nobody got fired for hiring IBM. Like those typically aren't the good fits. Like we want somebody that's going to do something a little bit different. Like if you're going to use a lot of off the shelf solutions and try to cobble them together, that's not really a good fit. When somebody wants to build something that's custom, that really solves a big problem, that's a great fit for our business critical team. And we're starting to get into like AI stuff, not using AI tools, but like building them.
Mm-hmm. And then, I know you had merged. Do you in the future look for more mergers or acquisitions for your company?
Yeah, we were on the hunt. We spoke with, I don't know, probably near a dozen companies. But the thing was that every time we would dig in and then try to align their numbers with expectations, it really didn't make sense because we were looking for agencies that were under like 2 million. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I think there was an evolution for us to do self-discovery and come to the realization like, okay, I don't think those are right. And then as the vision kind of shifted based on what the economy needed, it kind of put us in our place because we were looking for a design agency at one time, and then we just were like, okay, what are we really buying there? Well, we're buying talent, so let's just go find the talent. So when I had just found the talent, like, okay, all right, well, we solved that problem. So I think if you're really buying, if we were to look for somebody, it would be they have a really strong book of business and some long-term clients, and it's somebody that wants to change, that doesn't want to do all the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. So right now, who's ideal for you? So under 2 million and not a design agency, any particular types of specialties?
Yeah, I mean, somebody that's really strong at paid search is interesting. We're really strong at that and as well as SEO, but those would always be really interesting to me because it's going to come down to kind of their clients, and also even on the tech and dev side. So I think it would just be, I mean, I hate saying it this way, are they serving their customers the right way, and can we make a decent profit based on the forced multiplier?
Do you look at a certain percentage that you want as recurring revenue? Because like you said, with a design, they may be one-off projects. Yeah. Can you get those back or not? Are you looking for a certain percentage to be on recurring for that company?
I'd say, yeah, most of it. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if it's a dev agency, I mean, that's going to be kind of hard and whatnot, depending on, unless they have something really saucy about their model. But as far as on the marketing side, yeah, I'd like to see like 70, 80% of it recurring. And what we'd also, just to be candid, what we'd also look at is, okay, are their numbers low? And do we think that we could raise those with those clients? And then also, all right, how can we potentially cross-sell some of our other services that aren't potentially offered to these clients?
John, talk about the team.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
And also, yeah, we would take a hard look at the team and whatnot. Not that we'd want to let anybody go. How long have they been around and that kind of thing.
Talk about Creed for a second. I find that,
Yeah.
some companies I talk to gloss over it. Sometimes they don't, but all the bigger ones really take pride in their mission and values.
Typically, when we see a failure on a team member or in a client relationship side, it's typically they went against our core values, right? So people look at core values differently. They say, okay, well, this is our DNA. This is what makes it up. And those things may be true, but the easiest way for me to look at them is it's a filter. If the person doesn't have our values, they don't communicate properly, they're not responsive, they're not looking to do something exceptional. Those are ways that we would say, like, all right, this isn't a good fit, right? Especially in even the sales process. We're having to chase somebody continually to get us what they said they were going to give us, showing a lack of integrity. That's typically not going to be a good fit. They're not very responsive.
Yeah. So we're looking at Creed
Clarity,
here for a second.
Yep.
We have clarity, responsiveness, efficiency, excellence, and detail. What was your process for coming up with this?
This is funny. So yeah, we came up with this together when we were separate companies. This is one of the projects that we worked on when we were separate. The process is, and actually our old process, I'll be frank, was flawed. Like, I don't think it was the best process. So we actually refined these recently. And the best way is if you take your top employees, and if you have employees, take your top employees and you look at the values that represent that make them the best. And that's how you come up with really good core values for a company. And another way to do that is you get, you can do surveys, you get everybody together from a value standpoint, and you kind of create like this word cloud, and then you actually see the things that keep popping up the most. And that's what you can put together. Now, whether you can make it into an acronym or whatnot, I mean, I think that's what everybody tries to do. I've seen some, man, where like the word was like 9 or 10 letters. I'm like, dude, that's entirely too many values.
Right. John, I have one last question. And first of all, I just want to thank you. Thanks for sharing your journey, your knowledge. People can check out oyova.com, oyova.com. My last question is about software. And before you answer it, I do want to give a big shout out to Brandy Johnson. Brandy's the reason we met, and she runs limelightmarketing.com. So thank you, Brandy. And
awesome.
Yeah. How do you know Brandy?
We're in the mastermind group together. Yeah. Yeah. She's fantastic. There's a lot of similarities between some of our offering and hers. Yeah.
So thanks, Brandy. Software. What are people geek out and love to hear about what software? I'm sure this happens in the agency group. What software using for this or that? What are some of the softwares that keep coming up over and over that you like to use?
It's interesting about software is because there's a couple of different types of approaches. And I've seen this, and I made the mistake early in my career. Some agencies will like just keep changing all their tools. Well, you keep changing all your tools, that's really hard on your team. Especially, I've seen agencies change project management software like 2 or 3 times in the same year. That is just a brutal adoption. Some of the tools, though, I think this is some of the most exciting things when it comes to like live chats. There are a lot. I've seen some people use Intercom, which I think has been a strong tool in Drift. And as far as project management, we've been on Teamwork for like 10, 12 years, maybe now, something like that. I think that is one of the most versatile and best from a framework standpoint. And then Slack, man, if an agency isn't using Slack, and I don't know what to tell them. Like, it's just like, what's wrong with you? I actually had a conversation with a guy the other day. He's like, I don't use any instant messaging platforms. I'm like, do you text? He's like, yeah. Like, dude, that's instant messaging. Like, literally. Like it could text you. Like why would you? Like, what is this resistance? Like, why does that exist?
What do they use with the team to communicate? Just email then?
Yeah, they're all email, and I'm assuming phone calls, and I didn't want to like dig in and make the guy feel like a clown or something, but I was just like, dude, it's just like, it's instant for a reason. But maybe he's got something better than I do. I gotta maybe be a little bit more humble on that. Yeah, so I'd say those are probably the three that we use the most. And then, I mean, Zoom, I like Zoom over like Teams and Google and stuff like that. And I know I'm going to giving you some boring ones here.
What about proposal wise? Do any keep coming up?
I am anti-proposal software. Yeah. And it's because a lot of people, I mean, at the end of the day, all you need is a deck and a Word doc. And depending on how you're going to send the deck or the Word doc, but all these people want this like fancy thing that they're going to do. But you can hire a designer and then you're done. And like you don't have to pay that other fee. You can pay Google and share it with your team, or Microsoft if you're more into the PowerPoint and Word doc world to do that. And I think when you get all the fancy stuff in there, all you're doing is creating crutches rather than getting away from just having a rock hard, solid process with really good habits and making, what needs to happen.
Love it. I want to be the first one to thank you. Jon, everyone check out Oyova.com and Digital Mastermind, and we'll see you next time. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jon.
Thank you, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.